The book of Revelation is like an extension of the book of Acts. We've talked about Acts going right up to the Great Tribulation. Revelation pretty much picks up right there. Here, we read this last time. Let's, for context, read. And hopefully folks will get a glimpse of what we're going to do in Revelation. Revelation 12:1. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun. Remember, we talked about last time, that woman is Israel, clothed with the sun and moon under her feet. Upon her head a crown of 12 stars. She being with child, that's Jesus, travaileth in birth, pain to be delivered. There appeared another wonder in heaven, behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, 7 crowns upon his heads. We'll get into that we'll get into this in great detail when we get here in our study. His tail drew a third part of the stars of heaven and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman. Remember, that's Israel. So the dragon here, Satan, stood before the woman. So we have a Johnny Bench stance down, ready to deliver this and devour the baby. Those of you who know baseball, I guess. The woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. Look at verse 5. And she brought forth the man-child. That's Jesus' birth in Bethlehem. What was he going to do? Notice my dispensationalist friends. Notice my futurist friends. There is a comma here. Instead of a comma, in other words, instead of the same sentence, they want to put a gigantic, gigantic barrier of thousands and thousands and thousands of years here. The Bible teaches that the birth of Jesus is at the same time as him ruling the nations. Now, folks have a problem with that because their belief system is if he was actually ruling, it would look different. But that's not the case. Remember Psalm 110? He rules in the midst of his enemies. The power of the gospel. Peter, put your sword away. We're not doing this thing by military might. It's going to be ruled by love and by faith. Though I speak with tongues of angels, 1 Corinthians 13, and have not love, have not charity, I'm nothing. We're going to rule this world through the power of the cross by love. Jesus is ruling the nations with a rod of iron. Look at this. It's the same time period. She brought forth a man-child. That's the birth of Bethlehem. He was to rule all the nations with a rod of iron. That started after his ascension, Acts chapter 1. And her child, that's Jesus, was, look at this, folks, caught up onto God. That's Acts chapter 1, the ascension of Christ, and to his throne. Now, the scene, folks need to understand, the scenery there, if this was a movie, I could say, okay, cut camera, Revelation 12. Start camera, Daniel 7. That's the same scene as Daniel 7. I'll show you that in just a moment. But let's continue, because that's where we stopped last time. The woman, that's Israel, fled into the wilderness. Jesus said in Matthew 24, we're going to read this in just a little bit in our study down a little further. He's going to tell them when they see the Roman army surround Jerusalem that they are to flee into the wilderness of Judea. That is counterintuitive for a Jew. Jerusalem was a place you could live for probably up to 3 years with food, a series of tunnels that were like mazes. They could come up and sneak up on people. Jerusalem was almost impenetrable. It was almost impossible to take. And Jesus says, when you see the army starting to surround Jerusalem, I know, go into Jerusalem, go into the fortified city. No, that's not the instruction. The instruction is to go into the wilderness where there's no protection. Counterintuitive. All the people who are not listening to him are going to flee into what they think they should do, which is Jerusalem, and they're going to be destroyed. So the woman, that's Israel, look at this, after the birth of Christ and after his ascension, now we're post-ascension during the time period of the book of Acts, Israel's going to flee into the wilderness. That's what Jesus told them to do when he sees these things. He's going to have a place prepared for them by God, that they should feed her there. Look how long, Jimmy. How long is this? 1,203 score days. It's 3.5 years. Exactly 42 months. Exactly the length of time that we see the Great Tribulation of the Roman-Jewish War when the Romans are overtaking Jerusalem.
That's the same amount of days that Josephus wrote down, too. 42
That's right.
months. I don't think he was reading the Bible at that point.
He wasn't a big fan of Christians.
Right.
He didn't have any reason to help us on that. There was a war in heaven. So now here people understand the picture. When Jesus ascends in Acts chapter 1, he's ascending to the Father, where Satan has access. Have you considered my servant Job? Hey, where have you been? Oh, going to and fro up and down the earth. He has access. Accusing, the accuser of the brethren. They didn't do that sacrifice right. That one doesn't count. He was like the worst, criminal lawyer, like the slip and fall people. He's trying to find the frivolous lawsuits. And guess what? When Christ goes up in Acts chapter 1, there's a war in heaven. And Michael, I can probably imagine with a smile, goes over. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon. And the dragon fought against his angels. And guess who won that, guys? The dragon prevailed not, neither was there found their place found any more in heaven. He was kicked out of heaven. Where did he go after that? And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, just in case we don't miss it, which is deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Now, what do you guys think they would do once they were cast out of heaven in Acts chapter 1? Chaos. What does Jesus predict over the book of Acts? It's going to increasingly get more chaotic. Deception is going to run high. Why? Because Satan and his fallen angels are on the earth. And look at what it says. Now I heard the loud voice saying in heaven, now is come salvation. Folks, you know when heaven announced salvation has come? When Christ ascended on high, when he took his place at the right hand of the Father, when salvation has been offered to the whole world and anybody can call on his name and get saved. Heaven makes that announcement in Acts chapter 1 as Jesus is coronated and recognized as the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Now salvation has come and strength and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Messiah, Christ. What happened at that same time in Acts 1? The accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before God night and day. Isn't this simple? This is usually confusing passages. It's not when you have the right context. Now look what it says here. And they are the people on the earth. How did the people on the earth survive in such a situation? Well, they overcame him. How did they overcome the dragon with all of his fury? Here's how they did it. By the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. And they loved not their lives unto the death. So check this out. Therefore, rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth. Oh, there's a woe there to the inhabitants of the earth. Just like in Matthew 23. For the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knows that he hath but a short time. When the dragon saw that he was cast onto the earth, that is the time period of AD 30 to AD 70, he persecuted the woman, that's Israel, which brought forth the man-child. And to the woman they were given 2 wings of a great eagle. Now that's the ones that are in covenant, that she might fly into the wilderness. This is a quote from the Old Testament. I'll show you in a second. This great eagle that gives them wings to go into the wilderness, that she might fly in the wilderness into her place where she's nourished. For guess how long, folks? A time, that's 1. Times, that's plural of 2. That's 1 plus 2 is 3. And half a time, that's 3.5. What are they hiding from? The face of the serpent. And the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood. The end thereof is with a flood, it says in Daniel 9:27. The earth helped the woman, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed up the flood, which the dragon cast out of his mouth. The dragon was wroth with the woman. You think? Satan was mad at those in covenant and went to make war with the remnant of her seed. There's that remnant word we had in our understanding of the 2 covenants of Abraham and Mosaic covenant. What did they do? They keep the commandments of God, and notice what that means now. They have the testimony of Jesus Christ. Okay? Now, let's go ahead and pause there for just a second. Hopefully, light bulbs are going off for people to connect all this stuff. Let's go over to Exodus chapter 19 and verses 3 through 6. Here was the quote from Revelation 12. Moses went up unto God, and the Lord called unto him out of the mountain, saying, Thus shalt thou say to the house of Jacob, and tell the children of Israel, You've seen what I did unto the Egyptians, how I bear you on eagle's wings. So there is a connection between the 10 plagues and the idea of 10 in the Bible is a complete divine list. In fact, if you look at the days of creation, there are 10 acts of creation. I know there's 6 days of creative works, but there are 10 major statements of creation. It's a masking that God is putting between him and creation, that you could enjoy his creation and really deny him. He's masking himself. It's layers from the creator to the creation. And this masking there, you have a choice where you could say, I don't really think there's anything here. I'm an atheist. You have that choice. He's not in the same room. He's masked himself. Well, in the days of the 10 plagues of Egypt, he decreated, means he made himself known. We'll do a study on that another time. But each of the 10 plagues they're not throwaway plagues in Exodus. Each of those 10 plagues are reversing the days and the acts of creation, reversing creation. That's why it's all in decreation language. The sun won't shine. These things are going to fall down. And he's doing that to show himself. If the acts of creation are to mask himself, then decreation language is to show himself. And so he's doing the same thing we see in Revelation that he did in Exodus. He's the new Moses. He's delivering his people out of slavery by baptizing them through the Red Sea. And where are they to go now after their baptism of the Holy Spirit? Into the wilderness. What was the story in Exodus? They went into the wilderness. For how long? 40 years. That's the length of trial. Okay? No wonder he said, you endure to the end, you'll be saved. We'll get into that in a second. But I bear you on eagle's wings and brought you into myself. That's what he's saying. You're going to get on eagle's wings, Revelation 12. I'm going to bring you into a place that I prepared for you. I'm going to nourish you for a length of 3.5 years, 42 months. Now, therefore, if you will obey my voice indeed. Notice that? If, contingency. And keep my covenant. Then ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine. Who's he talking to? You shall be unto me a kingdom of priests, a holy nation. That's what Peter calls us now in Christ. We are now the ecclesia. Those in Christ are now the kingdom of priests, a holy nation. Okay? So all of this works together when you start understanding what's going on in the broader picture. Let's head back to Matthew 24.
I was going to say, weren't we doing a Matthew 24 study here?
We are doing a Matthew 24. Look, this is what we've gone over. There was 10 statements that begin here. All the other 9 start with the word and. Okay? These are 10 statements just lining up with the 10 acts of creation, the 10 commandments, the 10 plagues of Exodus. These all line up with a divine, complete list that God is changing something. When he says all of these things right here, deceive many, he that endures to the end, the same shall be saved. All these ideas have the concept of, when we see in the book of Acts, all these Judaizers are coming in because these are the ones that have been scandalized. These are the offended ones. But when we get to Revelation 12, we see why this happened. Because at the ascension of Christ, Satan is kicked out of heaven. He's come down. He starts making a total mess and a disaster. That's why so many people are deceived and false prophets arrive. The iniquity shall abound and the love of many shall wax cold. So all of this works together with the ascension of Christ, him leaving his spirit to guide those who want to be saved, and that Satan is just running rampant on the earth during this time because he's upset about the faithful remnant of God.
Let me ask you something, because I know somebody may have this question.
Sure, yeah.
So before Satan was kicked out of heaven, he still could go back and forth. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Because he was on earth messing with Jesus even.
Mm-hmm.
And what about he entered into Judas, and so he had
back
access both realms, right?
That's right.
But at the ascension, you're saying he lost access to heaven and he was strictly down here on the earth.
Correct. When Jesus says, and I'll just show it again, when Jesus says in Matthew 28, verse 18, he says, I have been given all powers given unto me in heaven.
Yeah.
That's the point of me emphasizing that.
Yeah. Okay.
And on earth. So
I just want to clarify that.
No, I appreciate you asking. So Satan is kicked out of heaven here. Where does he go? Goes to the earth. But guess what? Jesus has jurisdiction there as well. The gospel spreads, and even in the middle of all this.
So this is the definition. I think this would be the definition of Satan being bound.
Yes.
because he doesn't have the power he used to have.
That's
And
correct.
his main power, if any, is just deception now at this point.
Well, he can't deceive the nations as a whole because Jesus took that away from him.
And
Part of
by
him
the
being bound
spreading of the gospel, I mean,
correct.
it's not being hidden from anybody anymore. Everybody can
That's correct.
access it.
Now, I know people are saying, but there's still deception today. There is deception today, a lot of deception, but it's a deception of those who want to reject the gospel. Remember, we talk about
outside of the salvation shelter.
Outside of the salvation shelter. That's
you're in the
absolutely right.
storm. You're vulnerable to the storm. You're vulnerable to
Where you will
anything
perish.
from the enemy. You get inside that salvation shelter and you're safe.
Outside the shelter, you're deceived, you're destroyed, you perish. Inside the shelter, resist the devil and he'll flee from you. That's why he has to seeking whom he may devour. He doesn't have a choice. He's not saying, oh, today I destroy Ken. No, he's looking for the one gazelle that's limping outside the pack.
Mm-hmm.
He's seeking for that person whom he may devour. He doesn't just pick. And the one about people always quote about him being the God of this world, look at the context. To them whose minds are blinded that have rejected the gospel.
Right. Outside of the salvation shelter.
Outside of the salvation shelter. That's right. So yes, there is deception by those who reject Christ. So simply stated, if you reject the gospel, you're not going to know what you're doing spiritually.
If you like this video, hit that like and subscribe button. And check out the full episode by clicking the link below.